You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and you remember how I said that I didn't want any more sad shows, no more deaths? Well, evidently someone up there doesn't like me, because there were two very noticeable deaths in the sports world today. Willie Davis and Damaso Garcia. So I'm going to eulogize them. I'll also give you the next four on my NFL Draft Big Board and the Milwaukee Brewers Mount Rushmore. I'm not going to talk about President Trump soliciting advice from guys like Adam Silver, Jerry Jones, and Mark Cuban about reopening this country, because that's a political issue. And yeah, I've talked a little politics on this show, but that was bouncing off of the death of Tom Dempsey. Just because Silver, Jones, and Cuban are some of the most powerful people in sports doesn't mean that it's a sports story. They can get involved in politics. Mark Cuban has gotten involved in politics before. He's openly mused about possibly running as an independent this year. So, I just don't think that's the right way to talk about the coronavirus. If something else comes up, like when we know the plans for these leagues to start up again, I will definitely talk about it, but not in the sense of President Trump just soliciting advice. He should be soliciting advice from these people. Now, when it comes to matters of health, definitely defer to the Anthony Fauci's of the world, but no, when it comes to business, you can do a lot worse than Jerry Jones, Mark Cuban, and Adam Silver. I don't mind that at all. So I'm really not going to talk about that. Instead, I really want to talk about Kenny Stills. And the reason why is because Aaron Reese of The Athletic openly mused about the possibility of a Kenny Stills trade. And it makes perfect sense. The Texans' depth chart at wide receiver is stacked. Brandon Cooks, Randall Cobb, Will Fuller, Kenny Stills, Kiki Cutie, and DeAndre Carter. Kenny Stills is due to make $7 million this year. If the Texans cut him, that's it. They save $7 million. There's no dead cap. It would make perfect sense for the Texans to cut Stills, save money, and draft a wide receiver. The thing with the Texans is, and truth be told, I didn't think of this until I read the Athletics article. A lot of these wide receivers are redundant. They're not big body possession guys. They're more speedsters. They're more downfield threats. Now that's okay in theory. You know, do you want one of each of the wide receiver archetypes? Or do you want the best wide receivers you can get? I want the best wide receivers I can get, in theory. But in practice, sometimes you just want to be able to throw it up to a wide receiver and let him make a play. There's nothing wrong with 1st and goal at the 3-yard line, lining up your big wide receiver so he's in single coverage against the corner, lobbing it up to him in a goal line fade situation, and see if he can make a play. Now, don't do that more than once. If it doesn't work once, it's not going to work again. Then you got to try something else. But trying it once, I don't mind that. And it has to be first down because it's a traditionally low percentage play. But it can work if done correctly. Most teams just don't do it correctly. They don't have the personnel for it. And a lot of the throws are off, if you notice. Kenny Stills could be cut. I could see that happening very easily. The Texans could very easily draft a big-bodied wide receiver later in this draft. And then they've got a depth chart of Cooks, Cobb, Fuller, the rookie wide receiver, and either Cutie or DeAndre Carter. And even then, Reese said that Cutie was on the roster bubble even before all these trades. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Texans in a little over a week. I could see Stills getting a day 3 pick. See, the thing with trading for a guy like Stills is, and I've said this a million times, I know you're sick of me saying it, but it's true. This wide receiver draft class is incredibly stacked. So you need to ask yourself, if you're a GM, would I rather have rookie X, or would I rather have Kenny Stills? And Kenny Stills is a really good wide receiver in this league. Yeah, he got hurt last year, but still, 40 catches for 561 yards and 4 touchdowns? That's not bad. I'll take that. If I have the cap space for it, I have no problem bringing him in. He's overpaid. He shouldn't be getting $7 million. But he's not a bad player. He's really not a bad player. He's a good player. He actually makes sense for the Jets because he used to play under Adam Gase. Now, I don't want the Jets to trade for Stills. The only way that I'd be okay with a Kenny Stills trade is if Jadeveon Clowney signs elsewhere and the Jets are giving up like a 5th round pick. Because I don't want to spend $7 million on Kenny Stills when that money could go towards Jadeveon Clowney, who I still want the Jets to get. Quite honestly, what I would love more than anything is if the Jets drafted C.J. Henderson at 11. And then the minute after he's drafted, they announced Jadeveon Clowney, just completely reinvent the defense. Oh my goodness, that'd be one of the best moments in recent Jets history. I really think that would work. But if the Jets don't sign Clowney and trade for Stills, well, wait a minute. Why are you spending all that money on Stills when you have a much bigger need at edge rusher? See, this is just what drives me nuts about people talking about the Jets. The notion that they need more offense than defense at this point. That is not true. I think the Jets' offense is basically set. They still need to get better around the edges. They've got to add a backup quarterback. They've got to add a backup running back at the draft. They do need to add another wide receiver. No question. They can do that at the draft. I don't mind that. But tight end is set, and offensive line, I'm okay with. Fant, Lewis, McGovern, Van Roten, and Udoka. I'm okay with that. Compare that to the defense. Glaring need a corner. Glaring need an edge rusher. You can't tell me that the Jets don't have a bigger need on defense than they do offense. Gnick with the giving Sam Darnold weapons. Sam Darnold is either going to succeed or he's not. Alright? It's just that simple. You could put him in the best system in NFL history, and if the talent isn't there, he's going to bust. The Jets have done as well as they can putting together a system where Sam Darnold can be successful. This is a make-or-break year for him. Alright? He's either going to succeed or he won't. And he doesn't have the luxury of getting hurt again. If he gets hurt again and misses numerous games again, that's it. I'm done. Part of being great is staying healthy. All in all, the Texans moving on from Stills makes perfect sense. Best case scenario for them, they're getting a 4th round pick for him. If they have to cut him, not the end of the world. They don't lose any money on it. He'd make sense for the Jets, but I don't want them to go after him until Jadeveon Clowney signs, because that money would be better used to bolster the defense than to bolster an already 90% set offense. The defense is not 90% set. The offense is. Moving on now to the death of Willie Davis. And there is no question that when you look at defensive players of the 1960s, Willie Davis would have to be near or at the top of your list. This guy was a 7-time champion. Won 5 NFL championships and 2 Super Bowls. Made 5 Pro Bowls. 6 All-Pro teams. And is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It doesn't get much better than that. This is a guy who started out as a member of the Cleveland Browns. He was drafted in 1956, but he didn't start his career until 58 because he was in the Army. But the Browns misused him. They played him on offense and defense. All due respect to Willie Davis, he wasn't an offensive player. And he didn't start a lot of games for the Browns, never got a chance to show what he could do. Then when he was traded to the Packers, Vince Lombardi unleashed the beast. And look, we don't have sacks to evaluate how great Davis was, but the career awards that I just outlined, I think, speak to his dominance. The Professional Football Researchers Association, which I've talked about before, and I actually have a good relationship with, has estimated that Willie Davis would have had over 100 sacks, maybe even 120, and would have had at least 40 between 1963 and 1965. The little bit of stats that I can give you is that in 1966, in the playoffs, Davis had 1.5 sacks. And in 1967, in the playoffs, Davis had 4 sacks. So 5.5 sacks in 2 playoffs, that's pretty darn good. That's a sack a game. I'll take that. He was very successful after football, stayed on the Packers board of directors, received his MBA from the University of Chicago, served on a bunch of boards for companies like Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, Sarah Lee, Schlitz, and actually was president of a broadcasting company that owned a bunch of radio stations. His grandson you should also keep an eye out for, Wyatt Davis. He's an offensive guard at OSU. He was a consensus first-team All-American and first-team All-Big Ten last year. He's a redshirt sophomore. You're going to be hearing his name a lot more soon, I think. All in all, Willie Davis was without question one of, if not the best defensive player of the 1960s. One of the best defensive players in NFL history. The 7 championships don't lie. The Pro Bowls don't lie. The All-Pros don't lie. He was insanely dominant. Moving on now to Damaso Garcia. And it's okay if you don't know who he is. Not the most household of names. But in the mid-1980s, he was a really good second baseman. And he almost never got there to begin with. He actually started his athletic career playing soccer, which I did not know. I'm not a soccer fan at all, so thank you, Wikipedia. I don't care what people say. Wikipedia is a reputable source. But he made his major league debut with the Yankees in '78 at the age of 21. And he only played 29 games with the Yankees in '78 and '79 before he was traded. Typical Yankees move of the 1980s, trade the young players before they get good. And Garcia was traded along with Chris Chambliss and Paul Mirabella for Rick Cerrone, Tom Underwood, and Ted Wilborn. Needless to say, that trade worked out really well for the Blue Jays, as Garcia, in his first full season, hit .278 with 4 home runs, 46 RBIs, and 13 steals, and finished 4th in AL Rookie of the Year voting. 1981, he got hurt, but he came back in '82 with his best season. He hit .310 with 5 homers, 42 RBIs, and won a Silver Slugger. I don't know how you win a Silver Slugger only hitting 5 home runs. I would need to go back and check all the American League second basemen of 1982 to see who hit more than him. But that is weird. That is really, really weird. I mean, I just looked this up. Guys like Bobby Grich, Lou Whitaker, and Frank White all hit more home runs than Garcia that year. Maybe it had to do with the fact that he had 54 steals that year. I shouldn't just mention that as an anecdote. 54 steals is really, really impressive. And this guy had incredible wheels. But Silver Slugger should be for home runs, not steals. 83, he kept his good play up, hit .307, 3 homers, 38 RBIs, and 31 steals. Then he made back-to-back All-Star teams. 1984, hit .284, 5 homers, 46 RBIs, 46 steals. And 1985, he hit .282 with 8 homers and 65 RBIs. You'd think that all was well and good with the Blue Jays. But they made a cataclysmic mistake. As in 1985, they lost the ALCS to the eventual World Series winning team that year, the Kansas City Royals, thank you, Don Denkinger, they lost in 7 games, and they decided to fire Bobby Cox, who won 99 games that year, 102 if you count the playoffs. The Blue Jays brought in Jimmy Williams. Jimmy Williams was a good manager. Not a great manager, but a good one. He didn't like Garcia. Him and Garcia just did not get along. And while Garcia was hitting leadoff for most of his Blue Jays tenure, he was dropped to 9th in 86. He didn't do well in that role. He only had 9 steals. The average stayed up, and his home run total didn't drop. His RBIs didn't drop. But the steals were what made Garcia really, really good, and they just weren't there anymore. On May 14th, 1986, the Blue Jays were in the midst of a bad season. They had just lost to the Athletics, 9-4. They had fallen 6 games under 500. They were last in the division, and they were 7.5 games out of a playoff spot. Granted, that's not an insurmountable deficit, but it's also not very good, especially when that team was in the ALCS the year before. So Garcia tried to appease the gods by burning his jersey. Jimmy Williams didn't like that. He confronted Garcia, made a big deal about it, as he should have. I mean, you don't burn the jersey. I remember when Chris Sale did something like that, he cut up all the White Sox throwbacks, and a bunch of people got upset. You just don't tarnish the jersey. That's wrong. That really spelled the end of Garcia's career. He didn't play in 87, and in 88 and 89, he only played 101 games. And it seemed that he was going to fade into obscurity after that, but a year after he retired, he had double vision and was diagnosed with a brain tumor. In 91, he had the tumor removed, was told that he only had 6 months to live. Well, the doctor was only off by 28.5 years. So, I mean, hey, you're in the ballpark, I guess. No? You're not in the ballpark? Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. Not a good look for that doctor. The tumor left him with limited speech. He couldn't drive a car. But Garcia stayed active in baseball as he launched a camp for baseball in the Dominican Republic for children who have hemophilia, which his oldest son has. Damaso Garcia was one of the best second basemen of the 1980s, and may he and Willie Davis rest in peace. Alright, now it's time for numbers 37 to 40 on my 2020 NFL Draft Big Board. They are Cole Kmet, Christian Fulton, Austin Jackson, and Cam Akers. Kmet is kind of a divisive prospect. He's not the most NFL-ready tight end in the draft. That's Albert Okwuegbunam out of Missouri. But in terms of potential, Kmet is ahead of him by a mile. This is a guy who is 6'6", 262 pounds, is strong. He has the frame to be a blocker. There's no question about that. He's just got to improve his receiving. That's the thing. Cole Kmet, if he is expected to contribute right away as a receiver, cannot work. But if he's used in a Trayvon Wesco type role, he'll be fine. In fact, he'll be more than fine. He'll be really good. He's also a one-hit wonder, which does scare some teams off. But Joe Burrow's a one-hit wonder, and he's going to be the first overall pick in the draft. Michael Pittman Jr. is going to be a high pick. He's a little bit of a one-hit wonder. I think Cole Kmet is going to have a really, really good career in the NFL if he's used correctly. Christian Fulton is really, really frustrating. This is a guy who should have been the next great cornerback prospect. I mean, all the talent in the world, when you watch him play, you see it. He can play every kind of coverage you want. He prevents separation. Fantastic athlete. But he is just so undisciplined, it's not even funny. You know how Aaron Rodgers likes to draw those offsides penalties and then throw the deep ball? Well, Rodgers is going to have a field day picking on Christian Fulton, as he can just lob it up to his wide receiver who's being guarded by Fulton, and Fulton will commit a pass interference penalty. He is one of the most undisciplined players in this draft. And if he goes to a team with an unstructured setup, that's it. He will bust. He will flame out of this league. There are going to be people saying that he's too undisciplined and he can't be coached, blah, 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 all that nonsense. No, you can coach him. He just needs structure. All the talent is there. He just has to go to a team that's going to be able to whip him into shape. He'd be a perfect New England Patriot. I don't think there's a question about that. Adam Gase wouldn't put up with any of his nonsense. Christian Fulton has all the potential to be a great cornerback in this league. He just has to get his head screwed on straight. Austin Jackson is incredibly raw. He needs a lot of development. If you put him in week 1, forget about it. He's going to get run over every single play. But he has all the upside in the world. He's 6'6", 305 pounds. And he can move. He has some of the quickest feet in this draft. If you're looking for athletic offensive linemen, your order should be Becton, Wills, Jackson. Because Tristan Wirfs is not as athletic as Jackson. Neither is Andrew Thomas. I even think that guys like Becton and Wills are raw to a certain extent. They just have freakish athleticism for an offensive lineman. They can set the edge really well, and that's all they're going to be good for right away. Jackson needs to improve his hands. He's got to get stronger. He has all the upside in the world. The theme of this foursome is upside. He just needs the right coach to get it out of him. There is such a thing as being drafted by the wrong team. If you go into a system that doesn't fit you, if you're starting when you should be sitting, or sitting when you should be starting, that's gonna be with you forever. The list of guys to be drafted by the wrong team and have their careers altered for time immemorial runs a mile long. It happens in basketball, and it definitely happens in football. If you're looking for an offensive running back, just go with Cam Akers. Don't go with Edwards-Helaire, don't go with Dobbins, don't go with Swift, don't go with Taylor. Go with Cam Akers. If you want a running back who's going to block well, do not go with Cam Akers. He is not strong. He does not block well. He tries to chip too much. It doesn't work. Cam Akers is incredibly talented offensively, but when it comes to blocking, which is the opposite of offense for a running back, that's it. Oh man, he gets eaten alive. I shouldn't minimize how good he is as a pure runner and pass catcher. Get this guy into open space and, oh man, watch him go. This kid has really, really good speed. Reminds me a lot of Austin Eckler. I think Cam Akers can be a great player in this league. He just can't block. That's not the end of the world for a running back, but it is a tool that he should have, but he doesn't. Alright, now it's time for another Mount Rushmore. We're on the Milwaukee Brewers now, and when I was younger, I really liked watching old Brewers games. I don't know why, but something about guys like Robin Yount, Paul Molitor, Gorman Thomas, Cecil Cooper, Jim Gantner, those guys just spoke to me, for lack of a better term. Harvey Keene as their manager, Harvey's Wallbangers. Really, really fun teams to watch. It's a shame that they never won a World Series, but hey, they lost to a good Cardinals team in 1982. With that in mind, the correct Mount Rushmore is Robin Yount, Paul Molitor, Ryan Braun, and Cecil Cooper. We all know the story with Robin Yount. At least, we all should. This is a guy who was drafted straight out of high school in 1973, third overall, and then in 74, at the age of 18, played 107 games. And, granted, only hit .250, but held his own. As an 18-year-old, that's really, really impressive. He stayed with the Brewers his whole career, has over 3,000 hits, 3,142 to be exact, 2 MVPs, and is without question one of the best shortstops in baseball history. The Robin to his Batman was Paul Molitor. I actually met Paul Molitor once, and here's a funny story about Paul Molitor, because I really hope you don't need me to tell you how great Molitor was. I was at a Yankees-Twins game at Target Field, and Paul Molitor is sitting in my section on the other side of it. Now, he's with his son, so you have to approach him gingerly. So, at a half inning, went up to him with my pen and my scorecard, made sure he wasn't talking to anyone, and I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Molitor, I'm a big fan. I was wondering if you'd sign my scorecard." He did. I shook his hand, and then I left. From what I was told, he was kind of abrasive. I did not get that at all. I think Paul Molitor's a really nice guy, and I think he deserves another chance as an MLB manager. You don't like him because he doesn't fall into the sabermetrics mold. I'll take Paul Molitor as manager of my team, no problem. I don't like sabermetrics. You know I don't. I think the best interview in this show's history was the interview that I did with Bill Ripken, where we really clicked over traditional baseball. But to give you a sense of when that game was with Molitor, that was the same day that the Islanders announced that they were going to amnesty Rick DiPietro. And it's funny, we're in the middle of the game, nothing incredibly exciting is happening, and all of a sudden I just start pumping my fist, yeah! Yeah! My father turns to me, Jacob, what on earth are you doing? The Islanders are amnestying Rick DiPietro! Yeah! We both started cheering. Oh, man. Gotta love Garth Snow, right? And by love, I mean hate. Oh, man alive. Ryan Braun, the Jewish Giant. We all know how good he is. Really, really unfortunate what he did with the steroids. I remember how he got out of the suspension. He was able to say that the Courier diluted his sample by not delivering it in a timely fashion. Then with the biogenesis stuff coming out, yeah, Braun was suspended, and he really hurt that Courier. I don't know if he ever recovered from it, but his reputation was damaged for a long time. Having said that, though, Ryan Braun, still, tremendous player. I don't look at the steroids as an automatic disqualifier. I understand that it helped him. I get that. But this is a guy who, early on in his career, was one of the best players in baseball. And I understand that he tailed off after the suspension, but he's still really, really good. From 2014 to now, Braun is averaging 22 homers and 74 RBIs. Now, granted, he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory before he got suspended. Not anymore. Now it's just the Hall of Very Good. There's no doubting that the steroids helped him, but you still have to put him third on your Brewers Mount Rushmore. You can't take his accomplishments away from him. You want to say that the steroids helped him? No question. You don't know how much, you don't know when exactly he took them, but yeah, you can certainly look at his career with a grain of salt. And there's no question that it's hurt his Hall of Fame candidacy. I don't think he's getting into the Hall of Fame. Hall of Very Good, yes. Hall of Fame, no. The last spot on this list was really tough. I was debating between Cooper, Jeff Jenkins, and Jim Gantner. Ultimately, I went with Cooper because he was a 5-time All-Star with the Brewers, 2-time Gold Glover, 3-time Silver Slugger winner, placed in the top 10 of MVP voting 4 times, has some bold type, led Major League Baseball in RBIs twice, led the league in doubles twice, one of the best first basemen of his era. And it's a shame how he's been lost to history. A lot of Harvey's wallbangers have been lost to history. If you can, watch the 82 World Series. Very, very fun World Series. Tomorrow is going to be really fun, as I'm going to be doing a 2-person NFL mock draft with Nick Warnberger. That's going to be the whole show. We're going to go in on everything NFL draft. The one thing I'll say is that show may be a little later, like 4:30, 5 o'clock-ish, depending how long it takes me to edit. I know that this show is going to go up late, but that's because I had to re-record some stuff when I found out that Willie Davis died. Regardless, it's going to be worth the wait. It's going to be a lot of fun talking to Nick. Haven't talked to him in months. I really liked I'm getting to reconnect with a lot of my friends with this show. I love doing this. I hope that you love it too. Until tomorrow, I am Jacob Valk saying that my Little League coach wanted me to play third base like Brooks Robinson. But in reality, I played it more like Mel Brooks.